Now let us come to the Davis-Gibson flashlight torsion dynamometer. Now in this dynamometer it is going to measure the angle of twist, and if we know the angle of twist, we are able to find the power transmitted or torque transmitted by the shaft of the engine. So here this dynamometer tries to measure the angle of twist by means of light, and so it is called as flashlight torsion dynamometer. Now it is the fact that light travels in a straight line through air of uniform density, and the velocity of light is infinite. So this dynamometer depends on the same fact. Now the arrangement is shown in figure. It consists of two discs A and B, and it have the holes or slots, same slots at A and B respectively. Now the figure B shows the arrangement of this dynamometer, where this disc, a light is placed behind the disc A and an eyepiece is placed behind the disc B. Now this eyepiece is nothing but the light sensor, and this has slight adjustment, provision for adjustment of its position on the shaft, so that this eye piece can move in anti-clockwise or clockwise direction above the shaft. Okay, now at position B, in figure B, we can see that when the power is not transmitted by the shaft, both the holes, that is hole on A and hole on B, are in line with the shaft, and eyepiece E is also in line. So hence when light is flashed, the sensor E or eyepiece E will detect the light, and we can say that in this case power is not transmitted by the shaft. Now when the high amount of power is transmitted by the shaft, what happens? The disc A and the light are in line, whereas the disc, as the shaft gets twist, this hole on the disc B suddenly changes the position. Now as it changes the position, what happens? The light L, the disc hole A on the disc A, and the eyepiece are in line, but the hole on the disc B is not in line with the shaft, and hence eyepiece is not able to detect the light. Now as it have this light provision to move over the shaft in either clockwise or anti-clockwise direction, this eyepiece is turned to come in line with the hole, that is light L, the hole A, the hole B, and E. Now these are in line when the eyepiece is turned around, and hence it will detect the light, and as it gets turned, the amount of turn can be measured, and accordingly the angle of twist theta can be measured. So this is a very accurate device which can operate the turn of this eyepiece can operate at micrometer level, and by means of it can measure around the angle of twist may be measured up to 1/100th of a degree. So you can just imagine what is the accuracy level of this device. So this Gibson flashlight torsion dynamometer is a very useful dynamometer when the power transmitted by the system is very high. Now let us solve one problem on the torsion dynamometer, and now it is very easy as far as the problem is concerned. Now in this problem it is given that a torsion dynamometer is fitted on turbine shaft to measure the angle of twist. It is observed that the shaft twist is 1.5 degree in a length of 5 meters at 500 rpm. The shaft is solid and has a diameter of 200 mm. If the modulus of rigidity for the shaft material is 85 GPa, find the power transmitted by the turbine. So we have been given that angle of twist, that is theta, is equal to 1.5 degree. So in terms of radian it is 0.026 radian. The length of the shaft is also given to us as 5 meter, and the speed of rotation of the shaft is given to us as 500 rpm. It is also given that the shaft is solid and its diameter is 200 mm. So diameter of shaft D is equal to 0.2 meter. So modulus of rigidity of the material is also given to us as 85 GPa, that is equal to 8.5 × 10⁹ Newton per meter square. Now polar moment of inertia for solid shaft is pi by 32 d⁴. So we get the value of polar moment of inertia in terms of meter raised to power 4. So in the previous formula for torsion in shaft, the formula was T by J is equal to G into theta upon L, where G is the modulus of rigidity of the shaft material, T is the torque, J is the polar moment of inertia of the shaft, theta is the angle of twist, and L is the length of shaft. Now we know the value of L, we know the value of theta, we know the value of G, and we also know the value of J. So we can compute the value of torque transmitted by the shaft. Therefore torque transmitted by the shaft comes to us around 70,000 Newton meter. So the 69,909 Newton meter is the total amount of torque transmitted by the shaft. Now as we know the value of torque, we can find the power as P is equal to 2 pi nt by 60, where n is the RPM of the shaft. Therefore putting these values of RPM and the torque in this equation, we get the power equal to 3660.45 kilowatt. So it is very easy to compute the power generated or transmitted by the shaft through this formula. Only the thing is, the value of theta has to be measured very accurately. Okay, so let's move to the next type of transmission dynamometer. The third category or type of transmission dynamometer is epicyclic train dynamometer. As the name suggests, it consists of epicyclic gear train, and this epicyclic gear train is used to measure the power transmitted by the shaft of the or of the engine. Now here the arrangement is quite similar to the belt transmission type of dynamometer, only instead of belt the epicyclic gear train is used. Now as the arrangement is shown, let us understand first the arrangement of the system. Now this is the annular gear, where it is the internal gear, and this is attached to the power transmitting shaft. Okay. Now when this rotates in clockwise direction, this annular gear rotates in clockwise direction, the pinion also rotates in clockwise direction because this is the internal gear. Now as this rotates in clockwise direction, this spur gear also it rotates in anti-clockwise direction. Now as far as the center of these two gears, that is pinion and spur, is concerned, this pinion and the spur is pivoted on this lever. So there will be a pin and the gear will be mounted on the bearing. So there will be bearing between the pin and the gear. Here also for the pinion there will be a bearing between pin of the pinion and pinion. Okay. Now this lever again have dead weight at one end and adjustable weight at the other end. It also consists of stopper to avoid motion of this lever. Now when annular gear rotates, either this spur gear will rotate or this lever will rotate. Now if we consider that this is rotating and this gear is fixed, then this pinion, which is called as planet gear, has to rotate about its own center and also about center F. So this pinion will move in anti-clockwise direction about center F, whereas it will rotate in clockwise direction about its own center. While rotation, when the pinion rotates in anti-clockwise direction about F, the lever also has to rotate in anti-clockwise direction. But as it contains stopper SS, the pinion cannot rotate in anti-clockwise direction about F, and hence the gear F, the gear, that is spur gear, has to rotate about center F. Okay. So you must have understood the arrangement. Now let us say A is the distance between the centers of gear, spur gear and the pinion. Let us say L is the distance of the dead weight from the center of spur gear or annular gear. The center of spur and annular gear is same. Now here, as far as lever is concerned, the total force exerted at the pin of the pinion actually decides the motion of the lever, and it will be interesting to find out the force at the pinion. Now the pinion is connected between spur and the internal gear. Now the force exerted by the spur gear as it rotates anti-clockwise, and if the spur gear tries to stop, so this gear has to rotate, and in that case the tangential effort exerted by this spur gear will be in upward direction. Also, if this annular gear is rotating clockwise and this is also rotating clockwise, the reaction of this annular gear has to be supported by the pinion, and that reaction will also be in the direction opposite to that of motion of the annular gear, and that's why the force exerted by the reaction of the annular gear on the pinion will also in the upward direction. Now these two forces will definitely will be equal as the pinion is 1, and therefore total force at the center of the pinion will be equal to 2p. Now this force 2p tends to rotate the lever in anti-clockwise direction, so this lever will be kept or balanced in a horizontal direction by this dead weight W, so such that this total force exerted by the pinion at the pinion will be balanced. Okay, so you must have understood the arrangement of this epicyclic gear train and epicyclic train dynamometer. Now as we will be able to know the values of these forces, we will be able to know the torque generated by the shaft. Let's see how we can find the torque generated in this particular case. Virtually we can say that 2p is the amount of force acting at the center of pinion. Therefore at equilibrium the torque generated by this force 2p must be balanced by the torque generated by this weight above the center F. Therefore, taking the moment above F, we can say that 2p into A will be equal, should be equal to, that is 2p into 2p into this 2p, the force at pinion, into the distance A should be equal to the weight attached on the pan into its perpendicular distance. Therefore, that is L. Therefore, P will be equal to W into L by 2A. Hence, torque transmitted by the engine can be computed as torque is equal to force into the radial distance, that is R. Now P is the force and R is the radial distance. So at F, if we want to compute the torque, therefore we can say that the torque will be equal to P into the radial distance, that is R, and R is nothing but the pitch circle radius of the spur gear. Therefore we can say that T is equal to W into L by 2A into R. Hence, power transmitted by the engine thereby can be computed as T into omega, and putting the value of T in from the previous equation and omega equal to 2 pi n by 60, we get power generated by the engine equal to W into L into R into pi n by 60 into A. So this equation can find out the power generated by the engine by epicyclic train dynamometer, where we do not need to know the value of P, but we should know the value of pitch circle radius of gear, the distance of the weight from the center, and this weight, then distance of this weight, and the RPM, that is the rotational velocity, and the distance of this pinion from the center. Therefore, in this way we can find the power transmitted by the engine with the use of epicyclic gear train dynamometer. So here we complete all the types of dynamometer, and I will give you a small assignment over these types of dynamometers, and in the next videos we will continue with cam and follower. Thank you very much.